Howdy, riders. Welcome back to Right Between the Wines, virtual edition. I gotta be honest, I feel like every single episode I say, man, this is the best episode I've done yet. But golly, it's hard not to say that today. I got to speak with Matt Fowles in Victoria, Australia, owner of the Fowles Winery, winemaker. Such a cool, interesting, geeky, whiny sort of guy. And I've only met him in real life once, and it was such a pleasure to reconnect with him. So I hope you enjoy that. His wines are amazing. A little later in the episode, I'm going to be speaking with Kristian Niemi, talking about his reopening efforts, owner of Black Rooster, Bourbon, F2T Productions, Charitable Plate, Honey River Catering. Geez Louise, Kristian does a lot. Great episode. Buckle up. Let's ride.
The world we live in is an amazing one, full of passion, wonderment, and of course, fine wine. This is the story of one man's journey to fully understand and appreciate that world. So kick the tires and light the fires. It's time to ride between the wines.
It's Burgundian in style.
Just a whisper of cherry.
Very nice legs.
This is so perfectly balanced.
Such an old world style.
Is this laced with tobacco?
A total fruit bomb.
I say, so fancy!
G'day.
G'day, mate. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Mate, I've got beard envy. Look at you.
That's all right. I got hair envy. Look at you.
How you doing, brother?
I'm
Long time.
I know. I'm doing well. How are things down there?
Kind of mixed. You know, we're going okay, so I feel very grateful for that. But the whole of Melbourne is locked down with curfews at the moment. So pretty severe response to the second wave that we got. So the rest of the country is running free. So we're feeling, kind of upset. And of course, a lot of our customers live in Melbourne, so it's kind of lonely here. I got my beautiful restaurant all empty, which is kind of frustrating. But anyway, so it goes.
Fair enough.
We're in good health and reasonable spirit.
You're not that far from Melbourne, are you?
No, about an hour and a half.
I said, but you guys are COVID free or in much better shape than Melbourne, just an hour and a half away.
Exactly. So yeah, most of regional Victoria has 0 cases, and Melbourne flared up, very quickly, as this thing can do. And then we tried suppression, we lost control, and then they shut us down really hard. Mm-hmm. So hopefully by the middle of September we'll open up again, and then we'll try and limp along into Christmas and stuff.
Well, good luck. Same over here. I'm hoping for Christmas. But thank you so much for doing this. This is super exciting. I can easily say that you're my first Zoom podcast from Australia. And I want to say first one from south of the equator, at least over the Zoom. I know I've had a couple of fellows from Mendoza in the car back when I was still doing car stuff. But you got to be my only south of the equator, and definitely only Australia. So very exciting. Thank you. But yeah, we'll just, I got both wines, very excited about them. But really, if you could just kind of start off and tell me your story, which is a very cool story in general to me. And then after that, maybe we can talk a little bit Australia and then definitely do the wines.
Well, and you'll forgive me, I'll just sip away the coffee for
Oh,
now.
yeah. So for everybody at home, it's 7 p.m. here and it's 9 a.m. there. Is that correct? Yeah. Which is why I freaked out towards the end of this, because I'm so used to the time of the day that I film these. So I've moved to every side of the house to find some lighting, because usually I'm doing it right in this perfect spot with the natural light. And so now I'm hoping that it looks okay. But yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, so happy Friday to you, I guess.
Thank you.
But yeah, so Matt Fowles of Fowles Winery, Australia again. There's 2 different SKUs of your wines that I'm privy to in South Carolina. which are the farm to table wines we'll talk about, and then the ladies that shoot their lunch, which is fantastic. But I'm just gonna get started, Matt. Tell me how you got here.
Yeah, so look, mine was a circuitous route. We come from a long line of farmers. And, as is the case with farms sometimes, each generation they kind of get smaller and smaller, and farming families trying to make it work. So by the time it got to my folks, there was no farm and we ended up in the city. And but my father in particular and I, as soon as we had the opportunity, we got out of the city straight back up to the country. So mum and dad are sheep farmers up about 20 kilometres north of us. And then I was an attorney, and then I left with a big American law firm, actually. And then I left there as soon as I could. I got out early and dove into the wine industry, which, from a very young age, I was that kid outside catching bugs and running around the bush, as we call it here in Australia. And, I just wasn't made to be in buildings. So, and that sort of was just a part of me. I don't know why I got that. But, so my interest was in agriculture always, and wine is just such a beautiful agricultural product. And really at the age of about 15 or 16, it really captured my imagination. So, even at that age, my dad would kind of sneak me into wine shows, and I was a big, tall kid. So I was, able to get in there and just learn about it. And it really captured my imagination. So it bit me hard, and then I got distracted with law, and then was able to sort of dive up in this area, the Strathbogie Ranges north of Melbourne, and that's where our family, near to where our family has farmed historically. So it was an awesome opportunity to reconnect with regions.
Were you already married before you made that move?
No, sir. In fact, my wife was right. And then my wife was, she was doing the professional thing as well. So she's a graphic designer, and she was working for, a massive global agency. And, as professional couples, I guess it's sort of, it's kind of cliched, I guess. You think about, well, the work, yeah, it can be interesting, but it also kind of mundane, that office environment. So, our dream was to travel to New York and work over there, or London and work over there, to kind of make it interesting. So anyway, I wasn't enjoying law. I was capable of it, but, I didn't love it in the way I loved agriculture. And so one night, my father actually, there was this beautiful winery up in the region that we're from that fell on hard times. And he just shot me this note with the ad for the winery. And, I was like, yeah, this is it. I can tell we got to go. We got to get busy. And then I went home to my then girlfriend and said, hey, honey, forget New York, forget London. Let's go to Avenel. And Avenel at the time was 700 people, and it's not much more than that now. Uh-huh. But and so she was a bit bewildered, as you can imagine. But we did it. She's now my wife. So, I got something right. And look, she's kind of built the same way as me, outdoors, family first kind of stuff. So we did the big shift early.
Yeah. Well, I know we haven't told your whole story in your line, but the whole idea of that sounds kind of amazing to me. Outdoors, hunting, fishing, and just very, very small town with you and the family. I mean, that's, and wine, of course. I mean, yeah, I think you did it right.
Yeah, well, it's been a massive learning curve, because I wasn't sort of classically trained in the wine industry. I wasn't born to it like a lot of people are. So, it was pretty interesting early. And then when I walked up here, when I got up here, Mother Nature decided to kick the shit out of me for 4 vintages. So that was pretty interesting too. We had bushfires and drought. And by year 4, we were very close to not making it work. And there was some pretty confronting times. But then from 2010, we got a classic vintage. It was a beautiful, cool vintage, 35 degrees Celsius every day, cool nights, blue skies. And from then on, we had a run from 2010 through to really now, we've had really, really solid vintages. Some better than others, but mostly beautiful. So we're doing okay. It's good.
Can you speak a little bit to, so you're in Victoria, it would be the wine region, I guess, that you're in. Can you speak a little bit to, in general, what a growing season is there? You know, is your huge diurnal shift, or is it generally cool, or, you know, a little bit about that?
Yeah, so to put it in context overall, you know, Australia is a vast land. It's as big as the United States. So people tend to think of us as beaches and bikinis, but you know, there's this huge, it's like comparing LA to New York. I mean, it's just a gulf. It's vast land. And, you know, Western Australian wines, often near the coast, they have maritime influence. South Australian, you know, also some coastal regions, but generally, you know, hundreds of kilometres north of Victoria. So, you know, a warmer climate overall. And then Victoria is in this bottom southeast corner and generally much cooler. Victoria and Tasmania are kind of right down there together. So, and also in Victoria, you know, our regions, we have a lot of them. They're sort of very chopped up. So we're the sort of largest boutique state, if that makes sense. Okay. A lot of different terroir and so on. So, and then if I did a split within Victoria, there's kind of we've got this mountain range called the Great Dividing Range that sweeps right up the eastern seaboard. So it'd be like a set of mountains stretching from Texas through to Northern Virginia, say. And in Victoria, those regions that are south of the mountain have some maritime influence. So regions like Mornington Peninsula or Yarra Valley. And then those to the north have more desert-like climate. So you use the term diurnal shift. That is absolutely what we experience here. So we're north of the divide and we're elevated, so about 500 meters above sea level. Okay. And so we'll get flurries of snow in winter. So in the growing season, you know, I'll be t-shirt and shorts in the vineyard, you know, sweaty and uncomfortable. And then by night, you know, it's jacket on, pants on, because it's cool enough that, you know, and that's kind of a physical example of what it's like. So, you know, and look, there's other features of our region in particular, being on a mountain top. It's actually a granite peninsula. So we sit at the crest of this massive, well, it's actually called a massif, but massive granite peninsula, and our vineyards are on the top. And so we get weather coming from the west, hitting our hills and speeding up. And so it's quite a windy environment, which is good because it doesn't let frost settle, very, very low disease pressure. Being north of the divide without maritime influence, it's very dry. Mm-hmm. And so it's actually a very kind region to grow grapes. The only problem with the wind is fruit set. And sometimes we get, you know, that first week of December is when that happens for us. And sometimes we get poor fruit set. But otherwise, it's actually a very good place to grow grapes. The other feature being the ancient soil. So 440 million year old soil, rocks strewn throughout it, granite boulders everywhere, and really nutrient poor. So these vines, you know, really work hard to grow a canopy, produce fruit. Mm-hmm. And as you would know, when a vine struggles, it's put its effort into its survival, which is the grapes and the seed. And so that's where we get the beautiful fruit.
Is everything, all the vines that you're getting from on American rootstock, or is it on vinifera? Because I know that there's places in Australia that are still, I don't know if that's more west, but
actually, it's in our vineyard. We're split, and we are in a phylloxera region, so we're migrating to American rootstock. In South Australia and other parts of Australia, they're mostly own roots, but we will move to fully American rootstock in probably over the next 10 years or so.
So within your region? Are the varietals that I'm getting pretty much the varietals that work there? Have you tried some varietals that or varieties that suck or?
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, Verdelho didn't work for us, but that's also a marketing issue. Because of where we are, because we are north of this Great Dividing Range, very stable climate, and that large diurnal shift, we've got this. We're sort of in this strange pocket, which allows us to grow a huge variety, really the full spectrum.
Uh-huh.
So we're growing everything from Riesling through to Mourvedre. Riesling, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Gris, Chardonnay, and then, Shiraz, Cabernet, Pinot, Sangiovese, Arnase, Fermentino. So we have this really...
Wow.
Arnase? Yeah. And in fact, when we planted, I really love Arnase, and when we planted it, it was the largest planting of Arnase in Australia, which means nothing because... Yeah, right. There's not that many plantings. But the thing that I'm probably most interested, rather, a lot of our regions in Victoria were settled by new migrants to Australia, a lot of Italian families, one area to the north in particular. And because of that, there's a lot of experimentation with Italian varietals. And so we have done that, Arnase, Fermentino, Sangiovese, and it's getting a following in Australia. But my heritage isn't Italian, and it's not a particular focus for us.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I'm interested in is the consumption trends actually in food. I find really interesting. You think back 10 years and the nature of cuisine has shifted actually dramatically to this lighter, fresher style. And you think back 10 years ago, people were wearing normal clothes. Now they're wearing activewear. That people want to live lighter, live freer.
Uh-huh.
And I think the same trends are showing up in wine. So, our style, I'm obsessed with food. That's my lead passion, if you like. And so my interest is wines that are fit for food. And so we're actually pushing down this path of lighter style reds and whites, but reds in particular. So over the next, we've got a lot of Pinot Noir, Sangiovese, but over the next 5 years, you'll start seeing Tempranillo, Gamay, Nebbiolo. There'll be a whole suite of lighter style reds that will be really, I think, a huge part of the future.
That sounds great. That's more the direction that I'm generally happy to drink anyway. So that's awesome. Well, let's.
Do you think that's where? Oh, sorry, man. Do you think that's where the American market's shifting?
I don't know. Maybe. I think there's just different groups of people. Like when you think of the typical American steakhouse meat and potatoes, I think there's always going to be people who want a huge Napa cab, which is fine. But I think that's sort of ingrained into the American meat and potatoes. But on the other hand, I mean, for myself personally, Tempranillo, Sangiovese, something like that sounds great to me. It's Pinot obviously is the direction I want to go. So it's kind of hard to tell. I'm horrible at trends, and speaking for the rest of the country. But what I was gonna say was, if it's not weird to you, and since you're not actually drinking with me, can we go backwards? Can we do the Pinot first and then the Chard?
Yeah, man, let's do it. Whatever you like.
All right. Well, this is both of your wines, which we'll talk about, are 100% about food and pairing, and that's the driving force behind it. But the Pinot is such an easy. I'm going to show the farm to table labels are perfect because there's literally a pig on here, so I assume that's what we're having with it, and all the different labels, which I'll put up on the screen when I edit this. But this is just a cool concept. So tell me a little bit about how the farm to table line came about and what I'm drinking in this Pinot.
So when I moved up from the city, massive learning curve, and you get confronted with all these questions of life, big questions. How are you going to do this? How are you going to conduct your life up here? And one of the things Louisa and I committed to very early was sustainable farming. And so, partly that was born out of our supermarket being a 70-kilometre round trip. And it was
That'll do
terrible
it.
at that particular supermarket. anyway, that's a byline. But, you know, we started growing our own vegetables, and I've, you know, always been outdoorsy, as I mentioned, but I really got into provenance. So I started slaughtering my own lambs, learned to butcher lambs. And then if you think about meat, just meat for a moment, the ultimate free range is wild game. And so I got very interested in ethical hunting. So whole, you know, whenever we hunt, we use the whole animal. And so got really interested in that. And in truth, that wild meat has become probably my lead passion, my obsession. And so, you know, I found myself like, you know, out in the wild, you'd spend 2 days to create one meal and, you know, just obsessed with it. And what I found was I was starting to choose different wines. I was sorting for these styles that work well with game. And then I looked at those wines and I started to see a pattern. You know, I was looking for intensity of aroma and then quite a silky structure. So that's the sort of philosophy behind Ladies Who Shoot Their Lunch. And then there are things we can do all the way along from vineyard through to glass where you can push the style in that direction. So we can talk more about it later. But so I was obsessed with wild meat. It's very lean and dense, and it plays differently on your palate to farmed meat, which is softer in texture and has more fat, intramuscular fat as well. And so actually when farm meat hits your palate, you need different things from the wine, I believe, to work well with the farm meat. So it actually was wild meat, then Ladies Who Shoot Their Lunch and Are You Game? And then it came full circle. Well, I'm like, well, if I've got wines that work well with wild meat, surely I can find and make wines that work better with farm meat. So look, generally speaking, it's freshness of acid, super important. And I feel like that's like the highlighter. We call them highlighters. Do you call them highlighters? Highlighter pen when you know, highlight. Yeah, right. It's like the gastronomic equivalent of a highlighter acid. You know, it just brings out ingredients and obviously refreshes your palate. So that's an important feature. But because and obviously with farm meat with more fat, acid really helps to cut through the fat. So that's a really important feature of the wine. So in general terms, they would be fresher than their competitive set, if it makes sense. And then farm meat being softer in texture can take more fruit and oak derived tannin. So they're a little full bodied than say the Ladies Who Shoot Their Lunch. So, but the Pinot in particular, so I told you about the region, and we sit on this top of this escarpment. And one of the things that's remarkable about the Strathbogie Ranges, because it is so ancient, it's really weathered back to bedrock. And, you know, you'll be walking through any part of the two vineyards and, you know, there's rock at the surface. Like this is vines clinging onto the top of a rocky hill, basically. Something like you'd imagine in Greece or Mediterranean. So, and because it is weathered back to bedrock, the soil's actually remarkably even across the whole vineyard, all ancient decomposed granite. Quite a sandy loam, nutrient poor, and sheets water very easily. And because of that, a lot of regions around the world talk about this patch of soil being great for this variety, or this patch of soil being great for this variety. In our region, it's not so much the case. So what becomes more important in our region is actually aspect. And because we sit on top of this mountain range, and the land pitches in all different directions, the way we plant the blocks is more about aspect and then clonal diversity. So for example, with Shiraz, we have 5 different clones now that we're working with, and that helps bring the complexity into the wine. But in the case of this Pinot, farm to table, so this is grown predominantly on our Billy's vineyard, which is south-facing vineyard, so it's on the southeastern side of that the escarpment, and so it's that side of the escarpment's better for whites and Pinot generally, and because of the nutrient-poor soil, no matter what we do, we can't crop really more than 3 tonnes to the acre or 8 tonnes to the hectare, which is really very, very low. And then in the case of Pinot, we've taken it back a little bit more again. So, you know, one trial that we did early on, it was literally one bunch per cane. So, you know, not at all a lot.
Yeah, nothing.
trying to see what Pinot could do. And Pinot's an interesting one up our way. So I think a lot of Pinot is grown in these super marginal climates, obviously in the US, pushing up in the north west, and then in our part of the world, the southeast, and it seems in those marginal climates to unlock another dimension. You know, that funk and that complexity and the barnyardy, you know, all that beautiful secondary characters. In our case, we're more primary, so we get more the primary fruit expression, strawberries and cherries. And it's very consistent in our region, whereas in some of those more marginal regions, you know, they call it the heartache.
Yeah,
exactly. You know, you're right into your plan. 1 in 5 years is going to fail. We don't have that experience, but what we have to do is really manage our yield down to make sure we're getting that true varietal character, which I hope you see in that wine. So,
no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so you really mentioned how you how you're stressing with the farm to table wines the freshness, which it absolutely. I mean, I just popped it. What does that say for the ageability? Is this definitely something I want to drink today?
Well, usually when I see higher acid wines, you know, I think generally they age really well. So, but you know, we deliberately make it in this fresh style. So, you know, if you were to mature it, you go for your life. It'll age well. But, you know, we want all that primary, all that fresh to work well with the food. So, you know, although it has the capacity to age, you know, we're deliberately making that style so it'll work well with food. The other thing, and so drinking it now is totally fine by me too. The other thing is, I lived in the States for a year to connect with RNDC and guys like you. And the thing I noticed, I was benchmarking US Pinot, and generally actually it's made in a bigger style to what we make here. And I learned from some winemaker buddies over there that sometimes they'll be cut with, you know, varieties like Syrah, Shiraz, and so on. Whereas for us, you know, for me, going back a step, I think winemakers are doing that because those bigger styles can be very appealing, obviously, and that juicy fruit thing. But for me, Pinot is beautiful because of the lightness of it, you know, light and powerful. And so ours are 100% Pinot. We don't blend anything. I love seeing the color of that wine, you know, light and transparent, you know, that beautiful bright red. And you know, it's clearly a lighter bodied style, and, you know, as I believe it should be, but also that lighter style with fresher acid is going to work really well with food.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had it with food. It's great. Well, I do want to get into the Chardonnay, but I actually want to ask you another question on a wine we're not drinking tonight. But you mentioned Riesling, and I know that at this point, I think Australia is very well known for Riesling. I would think so. But specifically, it's the regions I think of are a little further west. What is the Riesling you're producing stylistically? Like, what are you going for, and what do you find to be indicative of it?
Well, I think you're right as a general comment. You know, South Australia, perhaps Western Australia are better known for Riesling, but it's actually our lead white. You know, it's the white that we've been most awarded for. So, you know, very capable of making Riesling in Victoria as well, as you'd expect with a cooler climate. But as a like sort of step back context point, you know, if Germany's known for sweet Riesling, and that's being challenged now by a lot of young folks over there, right. Australia's known for dry Riesling. So we make it in like teeth-aching acid, fresh stainless steel, bone dry. You know, this is high acid, you know, fresh, racy, and it's really, really pure. So when people are tasting Australian Riesling, you know, I'll do it at a trade show, and oh no, you know, the typical response is, I don't drink Riesling. And it's usually about the sweetness.
The sweetness.
And of course, right. And so people are shocked. But, you know, in terms of our Riesling, I think one of the things we get, because it is nutrient poor region and those vines are really, really working hard, across the board we get this intensity. And it's not heaviness, it's just intensity. And I know it's a ridiculous example, but I've come to say it because it seems to make sense to people. So bear with me for a moment. But if you take a male ballerina, right, and a male cage fighter, and you strip them down to their briefs, and you look at them, they basically look the same. You know, they're ripped, they're
very
strong.
muscular.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You throw those clothes back on them, and you let them practice their art form, and they manifest completely differently. Our wines are like the male ballerina. You know, there is no question that they're powerful and, you know, capable and strong, but they're light and dainty and restrained as well, and elegant and graceful. So it's perhaps a silly way of answering your question.
That's an amazing description. I love that example.
So, you know, sometimes wines are impressive for power and just raw strength and extraction and whatever. That's not us. Our wines are restrained and elegant. And so our Riesling is a style that's lovely lifted aromatics. You know, we get the best out of the Riesling variety in terms of aroma. So supercharged aroma. And then, yeah, just lovely straight lines, if you like, with Riesling. So we actually make two styles at our place. So we have the classic Australian style, crush it, rip it off skins, straight into stainless steel, fresh, racy, lean, lovely. And then in our case, with ladies who shoot their lunch, matching to wild game, which is dry and challenging to your palate, you want some more lusciousness. So we'll give it time in oak, on yeast lees, big, and when I say oak, I mean 5,000 litre oak casks. We'll give some, you know, maybe 8 weeks of lees context. We might have a little RS hanging in there to build out the middle. We'll sometimes blend other varieties into it. Gewurz has been one I've loved to do in the past. So just leaving that a bit more body and weight, I suppose, more Alsatian in style. Not common in Australia, but that's the way we make it for a wine to match with wild game. So, but one of the things that's happening in Australia, you know, and I don't know whether to think it's just happening, so I have to accept it, but a lot of the cool kids are making the German style Riesling again. So it's really cool at the moment to have this high RS. And, you know, I think it's great because, you know, who doesn't love those wines? They're delicious and beautiful. But at the same time, we're in this funny thing where Australia was starting to get to known for this dry Riesling style, internationally known.
Right.
And now we're confusing the population. It's like, oh, we were so close because, you know, from my point of view, the wine industry, all the winemakers in Australia drink Riesling. You know, it's the best value. It's a stunning variety. It's a wonderful food wine. We drink, you know, it might be, I'll make a ridiculous statement, like 20% of all the drinking that a winemaker does is Riesling. I mean, that's huge. And we find that we're in love with it, but the drinking public is confused about, you know, Riesling as a style. And now I guess we're adding to that confusion.
You're adding to it.
But it's a super exciting, you know, variety in Australia. It's if your wine geeks over there, you know, really want to have some fun with Australian wine, Riesling is a great space to play.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had a lot of delicious ones. Yeah, I agree with you. I also agree that I have the exact same problem with a Riesling selling it to anybody ever. Is automatically, I don't drink Riesling just because of the sweet factor. But I think we're beating it. So,
yeah.
But okay, so let's talk about ladies that shoot their lunch. Now, I have to confess to you that the last time that I actually met you, I don't know if I drank any of the ladies that shoot their lunch. I think I'd only had farm to table, but it wasn't until a couple of months ago that I actually cracked open a Chardonnay. I've drank the other ones several times, but this Chardonnay, I had, in the middle of COVID this year, playing board games with my wife, and I took a picture and posted on Facebook. It is one of the best Chardonnays I've ever had. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing. So I've been looking forward to this just to crack this open. I haven't had any of it yet tonight. But yeah, walk me through, tell me what wild ferment is and why this wine stands out so much, why it's so amazing.
Yeah, well, I think, for context point, Australia got known for Chardonnay. And when we started planting Chardonnay, it was like, oh, how do you do this? And we looked to the French and we made it, big and oaky and 100% Malo and, all this big, luscious kind of, dare I say it, sunshine in a bottle kind of style. We probably overdid it. I'm going to say we overdid it. We asked too much. Australia got known for this bigger style. We climbed the mountain and we didn't like what we saw. So as a community of wine makers, we've pulled our horns in and we're making, I think, a much more balanced style and our own style as a country, if you like. Yeah. So with this Chardonnay, I think balance is, go back to the male ballerina, balance is what we're talking about here. And so the first thing I look to is the vineyard, and we're trying to achieve full spectrum flavour. So you want your citrus through tropical, and then what other layers can we build around it? And keep in mind with ladies who shoot their lunch, we're looking for a wine that works with wild game. So we want that slightly fleshy, slippery mid palate. So this one is 100% barrel fermented. We do a couple of different picks at different times, and to achieve that full spectrum flavour and balance, exactly. So acid fresh, again, we want that freshness of acid is hugely important for wines that work well with food. So 100% of this is barrel fermented, and most of that is wild ferment. So now when I say 100% barrel fermented, people will think, oh, so it's oaky. Well, it's not oaky. So these are partly 5,000 litre oak casks. These are second fill, third fill French oak puncheons. So generally much larger format, older oak, which is more about texture than oak, showing up in the wine. Mm-hmm. Now, I presume you see there is oak presence, no doubt about it, but it's in check, is my hope. And, with malolactic, it's not 80%, it's not 50%, it's more like 10 to 30%. It's a lovely little layer, depending on the vintage. If we have a warmer year and the style's more luscious anyway, we'll back the Malo down. Mm-hmm. If it's a leaner year, we'll build the Malo up to try and balance and get this slipperiness in the mid palate. But because of all the separate barrels that these are being fermented in, there's perhaps 80 separate ferments that are making up the final blend. So in terms of the winemaking, this is a super exciting wine to make. We've got all these different options when we're barrel selecting, and we're always selecting with that filter of food. Mm-hmm. But it just helps achieve this kind of wicked complexity that I really, really like in the wine. And there's a lot of, it's very intense, but restrained at the same time, and then complexity and balance, throughout the wine. You asked it, or you mentioned wild fermentation. It's something I'm super keen on. So we're generally, I'm a sustainable farmer, I absolutely am. And then, minimum intervention is our top line philosophy, if you like. And it pervades everything we do. And one of the things we've experimented a lot with is this wild fermentation. So yeast is around us all right now, and I'll tell you, we let the yeast so most wineries would buy yeast in a packet, rip, tip, build the culture, and then inoculate the ferment, as you know. But there is another way, and it's letting the yeast that's present in the atmosphere around run the ferments. And when you do that, you get very or less predictable results. Mm-hmm. And so for winemakers, it gives us more options. Some of those results aren't great, and they'll get declassified. Uh-huh. And then some are mercurial, and they'll get pushed towards ladies who shoot their lunch. But it's kind of an interesting space, and I'm a bit geeky with this stuff. But I was reading about wild fermentation, and there's this view that is if you introduce commercial yeast, and keep in mind, the vast majority of the wine industry is using commercial yeast. It's absolutely standard practice. Right. But once you introduce that commercial yeast into the winery environment, those commercial yeasts are usually selected for a certain attribute, and they're very strong in that attribute. So they might be able to ferment at high alcohol, or they promote primary aroma. And there's all these different yeasts you can get to do different things. It's actually a remarkable field. Right. And so we have and do use commercial yeast, but less and less so. And there's this view that once you introduce commercial yeast into the winery, it will dominate the natural yeast, the indigenous, the wild ferments that we can do in the winery. So I wanted to test this idea, and it wasn't exactly like a scientific study, but it was, controlled enough that we didn't wear the clothes that we would normally wear to the winery. We wore different clothes, and we were trying to see if we could do a truly wild ferment. So what we did was we wanted to ferment the grapes in the field. And in Australian summer, we're not a very hot region, but in Australian summer it's still warm. And the problem is we chose to ferment them in these 1-ton fruit bins. And the big problem with that is temperature. How do you control temperature? Because you need, if the ferment gets too hot, it's going to kill the yeast and get stuck. So you could rig up chilling plates and all this sort of stuff. But I had this idea that why don't we build a crude, simple flotation around the top of the bin and drop it into our dam, we call it, a lake.
Awesome.
And let the ambient temperature of the water regulate the temperature of the ferment. So we're getting all excited about it, and we build this PVC floating, and so we pick all the fruit by hand. It's on a different site. It's a tiny, tiny little vineyard near our cellar door, different site to the winery and so on. We hand pick all the fruit, bucket it into this tub that's the bin that's floating in the middle of the dam. And then, we're doing it. It's all fun. We're having a great day. Kids are running everywhere, and, it's just a super, super good time. And we filled up this bin floating in the middle of the dam. And then I'm like, we got to crush it. We've got to release the juice. And I'm like, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'5" and 110 kilos. I jump in that bin, it's going under. And we didn't want the dam water to contaminate so our solution was to get a couple of strong blokes to hold the bin. And then we picked up children and took them and dropped them into the bin so they could crush the fruit, and they had a hell of a time, of course.
I'm sure.
But the cool thing was, so we it worked, and it fermented dry, and it was a really interesting experiment. But it made beautiful wine, and it gave me the confidence to really lead with this minimum intervention stuff. And some years, 100% of our Shiraz and 100% of our Pinot, and we're talking hundreds of tons, will do all wild ferment, which is really cool. So, wherever possible, we're trying philosophically not to consume, and also to harness the power of Mother Nature, rather than trying to be flexible with it rather than rigid to it. If you like, and so harness her power and let her do her work to the wine, I find that super exciting. It's like you've got to surrender yourself to her power. Yeah. So that's the wild ferment piece, and it's a real feature of our style and approach. And I think the best outcome, it has different byproducts to commercial yeast, and you see it in the wine. And I think if you've drunk a lot of wild fermented wine, you can see the character, but I don't know. I still don't know how to describe it other than funky or complexity. Or how do you describe it?
It tastes like an amazing Chardonnay, but I don't know that I'll have any idea how to tell you what characteristics I'm getting are due to natural yeast versus man-made yeast.
Yeah.
I tell you, I mean, just sitting here, I'm just drinking it now. But one of the things that really strikes me, and I think it's the same thing before that I like, is that you absolutely, when you drink it, your mouth is full. Like, it is a very full, and I'm going to say creamy, but again, it's not crazy mellowed, but it's a very full texture, but then it just, I don't know, it turns to water. It becomes very light and very crisp and refreshing all in the mouth. And it's very interesting. I'm maybe not describing it well.
No, but you actually are. I reckon it's perfect description. And the words don't matter, but you're creating that sense, which is exactly what we're trying to achieve. And think of wild game. So let's say we're chewing on a bit of eel or a rabbit, and it's drying out your palate as you eat it because it's so lean and dense, unlike farm meat. And so you want that slipperiness, that lusciousness, that fullness. But with any food wine, you don't want it to overwhelm the food. So that lightness that you're talking about on the finish and that freshness of acid it's all absolutely as we want it. We want that slipperiness to work well with the food, but we don't want it to dominate the food, and we want it to slide away. And that's where we're working really hard to get that full spectrum. But in the full spectrum fruit, we're weighted to the citrus end, and although we can achieve that fullness that you're talking about and describing through Lee's contact and other little tricks, I'm not going to reveal everything, but then, you don't want it to be that big, the cage fighter kind of version where you've got that big malo and that right fruit. Another way I've described it to people is if our wines were a banana, it would be a banana with a green tinge to the skin, not a banana with a brown tinge to the skin. Absolutely. So it's got that freshness, raciness, not that overripe and sweet fruit. So anyway, we walk on a tightrope. It's a fine line, and these are fine judgments. Half the people I speak to think I'm mad, but the way you described it then was bang on, because these are these fine little judgments we're making in the blending, and the idea behind the wine. That's exactly as we want it.
Well, you're crushing it. I appreciate it. This is great. Well, golly, I appreciate your time very much. I know I've gone a little bit longer than I signed you up for. But I love everything that you're doing. Thank you so much for coming from Australia to talk to me first thing in the morning for you. Is there anything I might have missed outside of people try these? We'll tell you later how to try them. But is there anything that we've missed in the Fowles story?
No, look, I mean, I won't bore you with any more, but I'll tell you what, one thing, we are open. I want you guys to all come down here when we get open again. I think the thing that, the only thing I get upset about is that the full extent of Australian wine is not fully understood around the world right now, every market. And it is a very exciting scene. There's some really, really cool stuff going on. So, whether it's Victoria, South Australia, Western Australia, Tasmania, give it a go, give it a try, spend a few bucks extra and watch the value. Because there's some really, really beautiful sites and clever people making great wine from Australia. And I think you'll see it more and more. I reckon it's we're on a good trend right now. So,
well, I don't think that I'm probably not the general consumer as far as a lot of that is concerned, but I feel like the air of critter wine stigma is kind of gone or going the way out. Like, at this point, I think you still don't see Australia doesn't have a huge section in every wine list, at least in South Carolina, but I think that negative stigma that was in the American mind for the longest is on the way out. Like, when I see an Australian wine, it's like, oh, this is fun. This is exciting. What is this? Something I haven't tried, So
yeah, I think hopefully that kind of sentiment's washed away, and there's a whole new generation of wine consumers. But the quality and the value is undeniable, and it just takes time for that to filter out. So we're going to keep pushing. Thanks for your time, mate. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time, man. Cheers. Thank you so much. So you just watched the episode with Matt Fowles from the Fowles Winery. The wines we tasted were the ladies that shoot their lunch and farm to table wines. And so Kristian is the absolute first person who popped to mind that needs to. I wonder if they can hear that.
The blower?
Yeah.
Can you hear the blower? Just nod if you can. Okay.
Matt is so passionate about. I mean, every winemaker is always going to say, "We make wine. We're thinking
Correct.
about food," and they all are.
Yeah.
But his different way, the farm-to-table wines, are specifically for farm animals. You know, with pork, chicken, cow, whatever.
He's back.
This guy is
How
not-
can you blow
this
one
is a
area?
very clean
Yeah.
area. It looks amazing.
Yes.
All right, when you guys come to Black Rooster, you are going to be
Yes.
amazed at how perfectly
Super well blown.
this patio is. I think we're fine.
He's not a professional landscaper. He's just the.
Well, that's definitely going to be bad.
Dude, really?
You're not in a hurry, right? I mean, you actually have things to do.
I think we
today.
should edit this all out, and we should just start from the
From the top. I'm glad I have that question.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Welcome to my Take 5 local restaurant segment with Take 8.
Take 8.
I'm here with Kristian Niemi from Black Rooster, which is about to reopen. Bourbon, which is about to reopen. Actually, by the time you see this, they might have already. We'll see. And then also Farm to Table Event Company. Actually, there's so many different things that you do.
F2T Productions and Honey River Catering
And Honey River Catering.
and the Charitable Plate.
And the charitable plate. I will say that I'm not going to ask any of the same questions, but when this was still in audio version, I used Kristian for my over the phone Take 5 segment, which
Yeah.
was episode 10, Feeling Peckish, with Keith Peck from Aquitaine. So go back and I can't link it because it's not on YouTube, but go back and check that one out. We talked about everything from the perfect way to drink bourbon to Taylor Swift's greatest hits.
Yes, I forgot about that since I don't know too much about her greatest.
Yeah, that
hits.
was the quickest question. I
Yeah,
think,
it
on the whole
was.
thing. But anyways, so this is the perfect episode. I thought as soon as Matt told me that he was willing to Zoom a podcast with me, I thought about this for several reasons. One of them is the farm to table connection. So Matt, when he was talking last night, because I actually just interviewed him last night. People were watching.
And we
together.
still plan to go to Australia to do an outdoor cooking event with him.
He would love that.
Yeah.
And I plan to get tagged on somehow.
You'll be our special wine consultant.
I'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when you go to
Can't do it without
his
you.
own winery, he definitely needs a consultant there. But
That's legit.
But so again, farm to table event company was I think where the marriage initially happened, and the first
Yeah.
time that I met Matt was probably the same first time Kristian met Matt. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. Was last year we all had dinner at Lula Drake, and also Vanessa was there, who again is your partner.
Yep.
So, anyways, that was a long way of coming back to saying I think this is the perfect episode to have you on. So
No,
thank
that
you
was
so much.
succinct. That was really.
That's
that was,
exactly what I do.
Yeah. Very Hemingway.
And the other thing that I want to say is that when I was talking to Matt, now every single winemaker I think says, I make this wine to go with food. And they're all being very honest because that's
True,
what wine
yeah.
is for food.
Yeah.
But talking to Matt last night, he definitely, he has the farm to table line, which he says this is what I wanted to make to go with farm food, poultry, cow, whatnot. And then he has the ladies that shoot their lunch line, which
Yep.
it's a little higher tier and absolutely fantastic. But the whole idea is game. So everything is
wild game.
to go with game because game has a very different pairing restrictions, different fat content, and he goes into. I mean, you just watch it. He goes into a lot of it.
Yeah.
But the whole time he was talking, all I could think about is every farm to table event at City Roots where you walk in and some carcass has been smoking all day long. Like everything is. I mean, really, what do you call it? Tail to snout or something like that?
Sure.
Or nose to snout?
Rooter to tutor.
Yeah, rooter to tutor. But yeah, the whole time I was talking to him, I was thinking about y'all. So thank you so much for doing this.
Of course.
Let's get to the actual questions.
This is a very
That's
good.
what we're here for.
It's a nice. It's a bracing rosé for breakfast.
That's the type you want.
I like it.
You know what's funny is yesterday when I did it, because Australia, he's the furthest
Yeah.
one away I've done yet. So I did it
Pretty
at
much the
7
other side of the
o'clock
world.
last night, and I'm like cheersing, and he's got like his Starbucks cup, and oh, I forgot.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. But we have 5 questions,
All right.
and they're the questions.
Hugh
that-
Jackman.
They're not those questions.
Okay.
All right. So, question number.
Oh yeah, mix them up.
1. All right. This question is called. I wrote 2 questions.
Jackman.
Number 1, just in case.
Okay.
It's called farm to table. So obviously,
Yeah.
everything we just talked about with farm to table is. I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit more about COVID time farm to table, because I know you've always had everything that you do, both with all the groups, but also Bourbon and everything that you've done here for years has your finger on the pulse of local farmers and this and that.
Correct.
How are they doing now? What's happening?
A lot of them have transitioned into selling directly to the public through co-ops and the monthly or weekly baskets and things like that, because basically restaurant and catering operations just went dark on them. We did too. As we've gone through this summer and have picked up a few catering jobs or done some private dinners, we've gotten some things from our farmers, but for the most part, all of them are trying to find other avenues for the time being. So, we had thought about doing the market type thing at the restaurant where our farmers would be able to get together, but then you just, as soon as we thought of that, we thought about that at about the same time we were thinking about reopening the first time, which was June 15th. And June 13th, when we held our little meeting, that was when one of our employees, it's 2 hours after we got done with our initiation meeting about reopening, they texted and said it just tested positive, and we were like, we just shut the whole thing down. So calling together our farmers to do a market, even if it was outdoors at one of the restaurants, still was a social distancing issue that we just didn't want to subject anybody to. So we've been in communication with our farmers, but we haven't been getting much from them. So a lot of our farmers, I think it may have been a good thing for a lot of them in that they were, instead of, and it may not be that great for us down the line, but I think what it did is it pushed them very quickly into the social media world and how to market their wares to the general public.
Right.
Instead of calling the restaurants and doing bulk orders of 20 to 30 pounds of something, they were having to figure out ways to get their product out there.
So maybe in the future they'll be able to do.
So
both
maybe in the
more
future,
efficiently.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So hopefully for some of them that'll be a good thing in the long run.
Well, here's hoping. I would.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's go to question number 2. Although I do want to mention this because I, not kissing your ass because you're the one sitting here right now, but literally, and I want to say it was March. I have no timeline of anything.
I don't
when
either.
anything happened. But I remember they had us initially just to be able to still pay us to do something. We were going to grocery stores and stocking wine. And,
Right.
And thank you, RNDC. Very much appreciated to have a job. But I was with Caroline Taylor, one of the other reps, and we were just, it was so long ago that we're like, so next month when everything opens back up.
Yeah.
But we were just asking each other, what is the first bite of something? What's the first restaurant you're going to go to? And like without even thinking about it, and I say this all the time, but it was the lamb burger. Yes, you knew.
I knew it.
It's the lamb burger. That was
Lamb
like
burger.
sitting down at Bourbon, having the triple B special, the burger, the bullet, and the beer. And yeah, that's, I'm so looking forward to getting to do that again.
Yep. So are we.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right, question number 2. This is called story time. Look at my light. So story time. So I just want to know, you have years and years in restaurants. Give me what is one of your favorite, maybe most funny stories that has occurred in your presence over the years?
Wow. Okay, this one, here's one. It's a little bit mean, but it's it was hilarious, and it was very indicative of kind of how we set the restaurant up at the time. And so this goes back to Mr. Friendly's days. This is probably our within the first year, maybe a year and a half of being open. And we had opened for dinner about a month after we opened the restaurant. So that was We opened in March of '95. We started doing dinner in April, I think. And yeah, it was about a year later is when we broke into the second space between us and what was then Sneakers and became Durkin's. And we were busy. Like, it was a very busy restaurant. We would be on about a 2-hour wait on any given weekend night. And I stepped out of the kitchen momentarily during a lull. We had cleared the board and orders were starting to trickle back in. We were on it had to be at least a 2-hour wait. And we didn't take reservations. You know, I still don't think they take reservations there. And there was a reason for that. It was such a small restaurant that we had to turn tables. We couldn't afford to have a table sitting for 15, 20 minutes, even, you know, longer, waiting for somebody to come and be seated. And so I walked out to look at the host sheet to see kind of how many more people we had, so I could go back in the kitchen and like prep anything that maybe we'd be running short on, because we had a lull there. So I step out there, and this imperious 60-something-year-old white guy steps up, and I look up and I said, "Can I help you?" And he goes, "Yes, reservation for Dr. blah blah blah." And I was like, "We don't take reservations, but I can put your name on the list. You know, we're on about right now it's dropped down. We're probably on about a 1-hour wait." And he looked at me and he said, "Do you know who I am?" And like, I have no patience for that sort of shit. So he said, so I looked at him. I made a point of like looking at him, like checking him out. And then I kind of stepped back and I went and I turned to my staff, because, you know, right in that area is the wait station.
Lord, this is great.
And there were like 3 of my staff standing there, and they were like getting waters and filling teas and pouring cups of coffee. And I said, hey guys, I said, "Do any of you know who this is?" And they all like looked at me like, "What?" And I said, "This guy right here." And they all looked up and they looked at him, and then they looked back at me and they all kind of shook their heads, and I go, "We have no idea who you are, so you can give me your name and I can put it on the list and you can wait."
Did he wait?
And he harumphed, you know, like, ugh. And then he actually looked at me and he said, "Well, I know Kristian."
Oh, that's great.
I was like, "Do you?" He goes, "Yes, I know Kristian." So he would see me immediately, and I said, "Well, if you really know Kristian, you would know that one of the things he tells his staff all the time is that he wouldn't even give his mother a table ahead of anybody else, and she almost died giving birth to him. So I don't see how that plays for you right now." And he got really pissed off, and he turned around and looked at the rest of his group. He says, "We're getting out of here." And he started to walk out, and they didn't move. They just stood there. And his wife walks up and she goes, "We plan on eating here tonight, so you just tell us how long it is to wait and where we can get a glass of wine, and I don't give a fuck where he goes."
That's great.
And I was like, first round's on me, and I ran over to the bar, got him a bottle of wine, and I handed him 3 glasses, and
That's perfect.
it was awesome. I just loved it. And then, you know, I think what it was, it was satisfying because it was like, this is our restaurant. This is, you know, we're going to do things our way here. And it kind of set the tone that my staff didn't ever have to worry about if any imperious jackoff came in again and tried to bully them into a table.
Yeah.
That's not how it works here. It's a very democratic system where your name goes on the list just like everybody else. So, yeah. So it's a mean story, but it was really a funny and kind of.
I think one of the.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't own my own business, but I think one of the things that I would want about owning my own business, and maybe one of the reasons people do, is so that, you know, this is my world. I'm going to describe, you know,
And that
the
works,
rules, you know?
and it really works well if you. Let's face it, we all know of people who do own their own businesses that take that to a bad extreme,
Right.
and are just jerks.
Yeah, but that's
Um,
very different than just.
Yeah,
these
they
are
don't
the
usually
rules, I'm
last
gonna play
long.
by it,
So, yeah. So that was a good one.
Yeah.
That was
that was
a
great.
good. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you for that. All right. Oh, this is a great one. This interview might turn out to be longer than Matt. All right, question number 3. May the force be with you. So, first of all,
Of course, there's a Star Wars.
yes, there
one.
has to be. All right, first of all, spoilers. Oh, second of all, I'm wearing my. I'm wearing my Star Wars. I only got 1 year out of this. I'm usually for Tiki Week wear my Gumby shirt.
Right.
This is my new Star Wars Tiki Week shirt that I look forward to getting to actually use again here in a couple months. But spoilers, if you haven't seen the last Star Wars, it's been like 8 months, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. But here's my
He knows how it riles me up.
So backstory on this. When The Last Jedi, God, I can't remember the names of the movies. When The Last Jedi came out, I saw it two or three times.
Is that the second to last one?
Yeah, that's the second to last one. So I saw it a couple of times in theaters, and I was forgiving of some of the things that I don't love about it, but there were, and I still maintain parts of it that were very enjoyable. The whole was amazing. But so I was kind of still in like the psyched mood, and then I was waiting at Lens Crafters or something one day, and you and I text for like 20 minutes, and over that time, you completely changed my opinion of the movie, destroyed it for me.
Sorry.
I go back. It's accurate. Like,
I wanted to walk out.
Ghost Yoda, floating Leia. Like, there's a lot of things in there that were just horrible.
Leia Poppins.
Yeah. What was that? But I don't think that we've had a conversation since December when Rise of Skywalker came out.
Yes.
My question was, which you can't ruin it for me. I loved it. But my question is, Rise of Skywalker, what are your thoughts? And if you could change one thing in that movie that you wish they had done differently, what would that be?
Oh, I don't know, because I'm having a hard time recalling everything that was in it. They packed so much into it. I can't tell the two apart, certain aspects of it, because I don't watch it as often. I watched it once. I went to the theater and saw it. Like I said, Last Jedi, I almost walked out on. I gave an audible groan to both the flying Leia and then I actually said out loud in the theater, I was like, Ghost Yoda, are you fucking kidding me? Like, where was he when all
the whole time,
when all the other shit was going down? Ghost Yoda just finally decides to show up then? This whole thing could be over if Ghost Yoda had just shown up.
Do you know that there's an answer to that, though?
What is the answer?
In the boards? The answer is that island, the Jedi Island, there's a confluence of the Force, and so it's very easy for him to show up there and have lightning powers, and he couldn't do it in the rest of the world, is the answer.
Okay.
Not a great one.
No. So wait, the last one, is that...
So the last one is the one where the Emperor is actually the bad guy in charge. He comes back. Yeah, that's kind of one of the...
That was the part... Okay, so
was that the thing?
That's the thing.
Okay,
I will agree that part of it was... I thought they could have done that better, but overall, we walked out of that one and we're like, that was enjoyable, but yeah, that whole battle scene at the end between him and that one was lacking.
Mm-hmm.
So otherwise, I liked the rest of it, for the most part.
Yeah, I liked it because the reason I liked it is the reason I think a lot of people hated it, which is it was straight up fan service. I'm a fan, and I love fan service.
Well, I wanted that.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. After Last Jedi, I wanted some fan service. I wanted, I'm not a huge fan. I'm not definitely you're a 10.
Thank you.
I'm like a 2 or 3. I've enjoyed them over the years. I remember standing in line to see the first one at the local theater, and the second one, and the third one. So I remember in my elementary school, they put on a Star Wars play. So yeah, I go way back. I'm that old, but I'm still like a 3.
Yeah, fair
I
enough.
watched them all, but I don't. I never owned a figurine or a lightsaber.
Thank you. I'm very proud of my lightsaber.
You're a 10.
Thank you.
You're a 10.
All right.
I look up to you in that aspect.
Well, thank you. The Force is strong with me.
It is strong.
Question number 4. Question number 4 is called "Welcome to the World of Tomorrow." Thank you. Little future on before you there. All right. It's a much funnier question than the actual question, but what does the restaurant scene look like to you in 1 year from now, 5 years from now? Like, how do you think it, and I know it's just conjecture at this point, but how do you see us bouncing back?
1 year from now, I'm hoping that it will be, that we will have that sense of normalcy we had before. And 5 years from now, I hope for the same.
Mhm.
I hope for, if this ever does happen again, that there's a much better initial response to it than there was on this one. It's disconcerting to watch, pandemic movie or documentaries that were made in 2017 and 2018 saying that we were way past due and that what was going to hit, and we botched this one
had
so
nothing,
poorly, so badly. So I'm hoping that a year from now, and this isn't a political thing by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
It's just literally I hope this one burns itself out enough to where where everything's normal again next year. I think we're all going to be a lot quicker to respond to it next time around, now that we know what it takes. And 5 years from now, I'm hoping for just more of the same. What I'm cautiously optimistic about is that more restaurants will survive this than fail. But the longer this stretches on, the more that are going to fall off. I think it's going to be I think the graph for this is going to be, as far as failures go, I think the longer this goes off, the more that curve is going to just shoot skyward, almost like the pandemic did in midsummer. I just think that so many restaurants right now are reaching their final. It's the final countdown for a lot of restaurants. Get that out of your head today.
Nice.
As they run out of cash reserves, as this drags out longer and 50% capacity is in place and all that, you're just going to see more drop off.
Right.
Right now, we're just seeing a lot of, in South Carolina, we're seeing alcohol licenses being due
Right.
for restaurants that aren't even open and can't use it anyway, and at
Right.
50% are going to lose a ton of money if they try to open.
Mhm.
QSRs and fast food places are killing it right now, but the independent restaurant scene, which is more about an experience,
Right.
an overall experience, food, wine, decor, service, all those things. It's like it's a gathering place. Nobody goes to their local QSR to gather with friends. Nobody says, "Hey, let's get together tonight and go." Have.
See, this is my fears, because all I keep going back to is Demolition Man, and let's go
Yeah.
out and have a Taco Bell fancy dinner.
Yeah.
That's just
It's not going to
my
happen.
greatest fear.
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen. I don't feel that we're going to. What would end up happening instead of that is that people would end up gathering in homes instead. So independents right now are at the most critical juncture ever. So what I worry about is that a year from now, if we get back to some normalcy, there are going to be a lot of your favorite places are just not going to exist anymore. And those people who own them are going to be in dire financial straits just due to the financial obligations that come along with the restaurant. I'm sorry, I had my phone turned on. So, yeah, I'm hoping for normalcy in a year, and complete normalcy, both with that ability to react to something like this, on our part and on our government's part.
Yeah, everybody's part.
Yeah.
I agree. That's 100%.
Yeah. This is like getting attacked by. This is like Pearl Harbor, in disease form. Like we were vulnerable and it happened. Now it's time to.
Now we know.
Now we know. So now is the time to build our reinforcements so that it can never happen again.
Yeah. That's exactly.
Divert
what needs to happen.
1% of the defense budget just to pandemic, and we could probably kill this.
Yeah. Well, we have arrived at question number 5.
Already?
Question number.
I can't believe you're still hanging on. This one will be really good, we promise.
Question number 5. I'm going to leave up to you a little bit. It is called Stick the Landing, which is where I always just say, "Tell me about." Yes, we made it. Tell me about. Generally, it's tell me about your restaurant and what's special and what separates it. But you have so many different facets of what you do. So pick maybe Rooster, Bourbon, catering, and tell us what makes it so special.
I think the common thread among all of them is that it's been every one of them has been, although each one is a completely different personality as far as the restaurant goes, there is an underlying character to all of them that is, we're local, we source locally, we give back locally, we're a good place to work. When I first, when we first opened Mr. Friendly's back in '95, it was a reaction to where the places we had worked before. So it was counter to that. It was a place where we wanted to work, where like if we were an employee, we would be happy there, and that was our key. That was our whole modus operandi was, look, we want to work, we want to own a place where we would want to work. And that's been it for all the places. Like every one of them has been that way, and each one has had its own distinct identity as far as like the food it serves and everything like that. But like I say, the characters always remain the same. You can kind of, all of our longtime customers, that's the one thing that they'll come back and say is that there's a personality to the restaurants. And the great thing about it is that a lot of that, like Mr. Friendly's, the great thing about that is that, Ricky kept a lot of the personality of that restaurant the same. He brought his own thing into it, but he and Harold kind of kept that same, vision for what the place was to be. And now, Laurel and Jackson and Jason, purchased Gervais and Vine recently, and they bring that to that place again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's, it's nice to see that's, we still like to refer people to those places because we still feel like that's all part of the family still, regardless of whether I'm an owner there or not. It's still part of the whole family of places. So I think that's what kind of makes our places, I think, special.
That's a great
So,
answer.
I guess.
So,
Did I stick the landing?
I think the landing has been stuck.
All right. Oh, shit, look at that. I got a 6.7 from the Russian judge.
So, I don't know if I said it in this take or the one before, but the Farm to Table Wines that Matt Fowles does is the official house wine for both Farm to Table Catering Company and Honey River, correct?
Well, Farm to Table, so it's now F2T Productions.
F2T.
So F2T Productions, basically what that is that is our production company that puts on the events like Great American Whiskey Fair, the farm dinners, the Main Street dinner. No, not Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras is its own. That's the Cru de Colombia. All the different beer festivals that we do, the Tiki Fiesta. So it's the production of those events. That's F2T Productions, and because it was getting so confusing with doing catering under that banner, we broke them into two separate companies, and now we have Honey River Catering. So that's basically our all local catering company.
Gotcha. Well, that's who you need to book with to try some of this delicious wine.
HoneyRiverCatering.com.
And I'll tag that everywhere, I'm sure. Other than that, thanks so much. Very much
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time. Yeah. And
Nothing like morning rosé.
Bourbon and Black Rooster are opening back up.
Our plan is to reopen the week following Labor Day, so it will be a very quiet opening. Don't show up like on Tuesday after Labor Day expecting us to be open, but maybe Wednesday or Thursday our doors, although our doors will be open, we will not be seating inside. We will be seating outside only, and here at Black Rooster we'll probably be taking reservations for the outdoor tables out along the front, and the rooftop will probably be a first come first serve sort of situation until we figure this out. You just have to be patient with us, please. Bourbon will be all outdoor seating. We're reserving the indoors in case there's a downpour, like there usually is in Columbia around this time of year, so that if there is a downpour, we can move everybody inside to socially distanced tables, and it doesn't make them have to pack up their stuff and run to their car. So we're going to stick with that for a little while until we kind of figure things out. So just be patient while we figure this shit out.
Perfect. I appreciate it. Good
Cool.
luck to you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, another episode down. Thank you so much to so many people. So let's get started. The Society of Wine Educators, thank you for allowing me the usage of your maps on the program. Robert Gardner, obviously, thank you so much for your beautiful music, for my intro music, from your album Soul of Confidence. RNDC, my employer, thank you for letting me get in touch with all these cool wine people. Jack Larkin, I haven't talked about you yet. Jack Larkin was on my audio-only podcast, episode 8, called You Don't Know Jack. And he's the one who actually hooked me up with a lot of amazing wine people who've been on the show, not to mention Matt Fowles in this episode. Thank you to Matt Fowles. Please try his wines. They're delicious. And thank you to Kristian for your time. You know, if you haven't checked out, if you live local and haven't ever been to Bourbon, when they reopen, that's somewhere you definitely want to be. And obviously Black Rooster's new restaurant. So many cool things going on there. Thank you so much for listening, you at home. If you're watching this, it's also available in audio. If you're listening to this, it's also available on YouTube. Please click the little face logo right here to subscribe, share my post, follow me on Facebook and Instagram, tell your friends, drink some delicious wine. Next week we'll have Ian Birch, winemaker from Archery Summit in Willamette, Oregon, who is also a great pleasure to talk to, and amazing wine. So see you next week. Till then, chin chin.
Cheers!